Hello and welcome back to the Geneva Blue Studio. It's been a long time since my last recording, which is why I'm here now to try and get something out before the 1 year ticks over since my last video. If you have a look on the YouTube channel, Geneva Blue, the last real video I did was was a year ago. It was over a year ago, and then I uploaded two videos. We did on the podcast with my colleagues Alex and Michael Woods, when we had Jean-Claude Biver on the show, and on the 2.5 Watchmakers thing it was, I think. And we had a Jean-Claude Biver video which lasted 40 minutes where we interviewed him, and then we had a 3.5 hour debrief video separately, well including the other one. And that was the last video I did, and that was, it'll be 1 year ago on the 3rd of April, which is in 4 days' time. So I thought, I've got to get another one done before it ticks over 1 year. So I don't know what I'm going to talk about, really. Well, I've got a few ideas. First thing, a wrist check. A lot of water has passed under the bridge since a year ago, and this is a Kurono Toki model, which I ordered whenever that happened. I think it was May last year. They started selling this, and it's a beautiful little watch. It's a 37mm dress watch, obviously. Catches the light nicely. You can't see all of the different effects on that salmon dial, but I really like it. It only arrived not that long ago. It only arrived this year, about a month ago. So it took a fair while to get here. I was one of the last ones to get it, typically, that I know of anyway. A lot of things have happened since the last recording. Obviously, I started this. The very first video I did was in August 2019, which is before it all went pear-shaped with COVID. Don't know what's happening with that. Looks like it's okay, doesn't matter. I'll get a bit of a bunged up eye here. If you'll notice, it's a bit swollen. All this side of my head's swollen because I was stung by a bee again on my Vespa. Flew in the side of my helmet and stung me about right there, and it was quite painful. This is about 2 days ago now. And sort of my head swelled up. I can still get my helmet off. But it was a bit of a pain, and now I've got this. Looks like I've been smacked in the face. Just in case you're wondering. What else has changed? So the big thing now is that I'm going. I talked about going to Switzerland just before COVID hit. When I was over in Melbourne at the beginning of 2020, and where it was all kicking off, and I didn't go. And we had flights with books that have been put back, and now we're finally ready to go again, and we're leaving this weekend, which is ironically the day it would have been on the 3rd, which is the day it would have been a year since my last video. Well, last video we talk about the vid number 27, which is before the JCB ones. I said that was a part 1, which what would be a two-part thing, explaining what was happening with that old rusty watch. Don't even know where it is. I'll probably put it up here somewhere. Can't even find it. Doesn't matter because I didn't do a second part anyway. I put it in the ultrasound and it didn't make much difference. Ultrasonic didn't make much difference. What I want to talk about today a little bit is dive watches or dive watch bezels, which has come into. I thought about it the other day because I was talking about this with somebody, and I realised that I was doing things when I got out from swimming with my dive watch, which everyone should do. Which I should be telling people if you're not a watchmaker. Some of these things are logical to watchmakers, but not for non-watchmakers. My go-to dive watch is this, the Pelagos, the 2-liner Pelagos. I bought back in 2013. And it has a pretty clicky, the bezel, for example, is quite a stiff action. Very, very distinct click action. I wanted to explain what happens with the bezel, how it's put on a dive watch. I've got this is a vintage Rolex field guide, which is ironic because I don't do too much with Rolex, but it's just for research. There's a picture here of how a flange is without the bezel. The bezel fits on around the outside of this, is press fitted, so it's friction fitted on the outside of this. The sapphire would be in the middle of that receptacle there, that hole. And on the outside here is where the bezel is fitted on. And underneath the bezel is a spring system which makes that click noise. And they looks like this. It's a very thin piece of spring steel. I'll just try and focus on it. This little bit you can see here is what goes into a hole drilled in the top of the case, and then there's three little one-way, you can see here, springs or bits of sort of flat or things that stop the bezel from turning back. Underneath the bezel are little notches like this. This is an old bezel off an Omega Seamaster, and if I focus on that, you'll see little notches on there. That fits on top of this spring system on top of the case, and then if I turn that now, you can hear it turning one way. Maybe, I'm not sure. It won't turn the other way. So I put it next to the mic. It's exactly the sound you get on a dive watch. So it's unidirectional. Now the unidirectional dive bezels haven't always existed. I think I just sold an old Tudor, which is only 30 years old. It's not that old, and that was a bidirectional bezel, and that was sort of a transition period where there was bezels which went both ways, and then bezels went the next model for Tudor at least, dive watches, the subs. They went one way, obviously one way, so you don't over time your oxygen run out of oxygen when you're diving. But different dive watches have a different click system, or sometimes it's quite smooth, sometimes it's quite rough comparatively. And what I've noticed about the Tudor ones, which is not the case with most watches, the 12 o'clock, the pip at 12 o'clock, it has a distinct click, which is or a stiffer click when it arrives at 12 o'clock. I can turn this around. I've done it many times, and it'll stop. I haven't looked at it. It'll stop. It's on 12. The click for the bezel, for the pip for 12 o'clock. That's as far as I know. It's only the case. Same with the Black Bay. Black Bays that I've had a few of those recently as well. I've had a few over the years, and it was stronger when it. You notice that. I'm not sure if other brands do that. I haven't got a clue. I don't. It's just something that sort of struck me, and I've played with that bezel for years, just absent-mindedly, and I've noticed that it's the same on some of the Black Bay. This is a Black Bay 79220N, the smiley Black Bay that I made for just a few months. Here is a Seiko Samurai, quite a bit smoother action. Still very obviously unidirectional. Unidirectional. This is an old EZA Heritage 72. It's copied from a dive watch in 72. Again, same system. Most of the dive watches use the same system. Not all of them. Some of them are quite flat, have different systems of ball bearings, but this is obviously the cheapest system, the cheapest effective system of having a unidirectional bezel. And what I wanted to mention was that I swim with this all the time. I was the other day down at Cottesloe, the beach here, swimming with it. I got it out every single time you get out or you swim with a dive watch. You should wash it or clean it. Wash it in just fresh water on the tap. Every time I swim with this, I come back, and when I have a shower, I leave it on when I have a shower, which I don't usually do with my watches. But for dive watches, I try and turn that under running water, and also within water, and even in the basin, just to try and turn it all the time. Because if you don't, And this is why it's a lot of the old Rolex and two-door subs or any old dive watches, they often get stuck and you can't move that either. I've had two-door subs in particular, only because I don't collect Rolex subs, but I had plenty of two-door subs, some of which don't move at all. And usually the pip will be stuck at around 12, and that's why, because salt water gets in there, it corrodes a little bit. This is spring steel. It's bright steel, but it'll still stainless spring steel, but it'll still corrode over after a few years, especially with salt water in it. So then it becomes very, very hard to move, and after a while it just won't move at all. So, but to keep it from doing that, you should really move that as much as you can. That's the only thing that can happen on an old watch. If the seals are okay, well, when I say old, something that's not brand new. So if the seals are okay, that's the only really moving part on the outside of the watch. Apart from obviously, if you have leather like this is one of my own straps, but the spring bar in there as well. Sometimes the salt water can get into the spring bar itself. The springs and in the middle of the spring bar, the salt water can get in there and they can corrode, and eventually the end will pop off these little spring bars basically. That's quite a new one for the moment. So keep an eye on that. Obviously, if you have a steel bracelet, which most people wear a diver on, a steel or rubber, steel bracelet or rubber, which is what they kind of makes sense. You'll have less hassle, but you should wash it every single time you get out of salt water or chlorine water. So a chlorine swimming pool, or salt water, especially ocean water. It will affect this bezel action. Sometimes you get tiny grains of sand going. I've had sand in there as well. And that makes it even worse. It can actually really almost jam. But again, a decent keep moving that bezel until it doesn't jam anymore, until it's free, and then you'll be right for years and years, basically. I've said basically again. I usually say that. Last video I noticed I said that about 20 times. It's my favourite word, because everything's pretty basic, really. I've got a RedBar t-shirt on. We launched RedBar in Perth in WA. That was, hadn't made note. Actually, I don't even know when it was. I think it was about a year ago. It was March, April in 2021, with two friends of mine, two watch guys, who we were talking about it for a while. You might remember those who listened to the podcast. We had Adam, for the founder of RedBar in New York. We had him on that podcast, I don't know, a bit over a year ago. And we talked about launching a WA one, or Perth one. And we finally got around to it, basically, with Andy and Jamie, two watch guys, serious watch guys here in Perth. And we had a few events. We had some nice events last year. We had kicked off with an event where we had a charity auction. It was a pretty successful event. We had a collector event where we had a presentation of a serious collection here in Perth, and we're still kicking on. So this is just I don't think it's what you call a prototype. It's going to be a t-shirt that's available from RedBar Perth. So doing a bit for RedBar. And the reason I wanted to get this done is because when we leave this weekend, we're going over to Switzerland. I'm going over to Switzerland with my wife and kids. There I will get the tail end of Watches and Wonders in Geneva. I'll be there for a couple of days. And also the AHCI show, and there's a few other little peripheral shows around Geneva. Then I'll spend a week catching up with the watchmaker guys and mates and everything else, people that I haven't seen for several years, at least 2 years, most of them, and a bit more, some of them. Then we'll have a week travelling around in the mountains, in the Alps, maybe a bit of skiing, if we're lucky, the kids at least. And then down into the north of Italy, a bit of time in Italy, a bit of good food, a bit of good wine. And then another week in Switzerland, again, running around, catching up with the people. And then we're back here at the end of April. So, I don't know, that turned out really good. That's my first take. It's my last take too. I can't be stuffed doing anything else. I'm going to bung that up. Any questions? Put down below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. I've got to say it, apparently. And Yeah, I'm just trying to look at my hair. So it was a bit pear shaped, literally a day ago. Going down now, it's okay. Bit more pepper, a bit more salt. Getting old, I suppose. Anyway, no one watches these anyway, so if you do, well done. See you later.